Continuing with Chapter 11 of The Sword and the Stone, the first part of this chapter is mostly the Wart and Maid Marian and Kay and Robin Wood planning on how they were going to get to Morgan Le Fay's castle, a description of how they walked there and how they were very quiet, and now the Wart and Kay and Marian are all standing together in a circle they've just made. Each made grasshopper noises to let each other know that they're there. The last stalk might have been a nightmare, but to the Wart it was heavenly. Suddenly he found himself filled with an exaltation of night, and felt that he was bodiless, silent, or transported. He felt that he could have walked upon a feeding rabbit and caught her up by the ears, furry and kicking, before she knew of his presence. He felt that he could have run between the legs of men on either. He felt that he could have run between the legs of the men on either side of him, or taken their bright daggers from their sheaths while they still moved on, undreaming. The passion of nocturnal secrecy was a wine that triumphed in his blood. He really was small and young enough to move as secretly as the warriors. Their age and weight made them lumber, in spite of their woodcraft, and his youth and lightness made him mobile in spite of his lack of it. It was an easy stalk, except for its added danger. The bushes thinned out, and the sounding bracken grew rarely in the swampy earth, so that they could move 3 times as fast. They went in a dream, unguided by owl's hoot or bat's twitter, but only kept together by the necessary pace which the sleeping forest imposed upon them. Some of them were fearful, some revengeful for their lost comrade, some, as it were, disbodied in the horrible sleepwalk of their stealth. They had hardly crept for 20 minutes when Maid Marian paused in her tracks, her fingers to her lips. She pointed silently toward the left. Neither of the boys had read the book of Sir John de Manderville, and so they did not know that a griffin was 8 times larger than a lion. Now, looking to the left in the silent gloom of night, they saw, cut out against the sky and against the stars, something which they would never have believed to be possible. It was a young male griffin in its first plumage. I suppose nobody who reads my book will have seen a griffin. The front end, and right down the forelegs and shoulders, it is like a stupendous falcon. The Persian beak, the long wings, in which the first primary is the longest, and the mighty talons are all the same, but as Manderville observes, the whole 8 times bigger than a lion. Behind the shoulders, moreover, a terrible change begins to take place. Where an ordinary falcon or eagle would content itself with 12 feathers in its tail, Falcon leonis serpentis, the Latin name used by ornithologists for a griffin, begins to grow the leon body and hind legs of the raving beast of Africa, and after that snake's tail, the boys now saw 24 feet high in the mysterious night light of the moon, with its sleeping head bowed upon its breast, so that the brutal beak lay on its breast feathers, an authentic Falco leonis serpentis that was better worth seeing than 1,000 condors. They drew their breath through their teeth, and for the moment hurried secretly on, storing that majestic vision of terror in the chambers of remembrance. The next part was exciting, for the castle of Queen Morgan began to draw against the rising moon. The castle was not like Sir Ector's rambling old fort. It was a single peel tower of about 5 stories, made out of shiny white marble. It soared straight into the air, gleaming like mother of pearl in the moonlight, and the window on top of its conical roof was contrived out of ivory pipes, so that when the wind blew it played unearthly music. It was neon lights around the front door, and darkness said in it was neon lights around the front door, which said in large letters, "The Queen of Air and Darkness, now showing." The boys said good-bye to Marian, made sure of the iron in their pockets, and walked bravely up to the bright entrance. Inside there was a red plush carpet and a large man with epaulets and gold buttons all over his stomach. He said, "Walk up!" So they did. On the first floor there was a maroon-colored carpet, and the walls were ornamented with brown pillars in sumptuous taste. 20 Moorish maidens wearing caps and aprons were dancing around a coffee urn, with trays of chocolates hung round their necks. There were ginger chocolates, Marian glazed chocolates, liqueur chocolates, and chocolates which stuck your teeth together. All these were free, and the 20 maidens offered them in a winning way, singing meanwhile. They sang in rather cockney voices this song: Chocolates, Prince, oh chocolates. You can eat them and fill up your pockets. They squish in the mouth, oh chocolates. They also squish in the pocolets. On the next floor, there was an orange carpet. The windows were made out of imitation lattice work, and some rafters had been nailed across the roof. In this room there were a great many brass warming pans, copper toasting forks, cowbells, china dogs, cloth rabbits, parchment lampshades, old prints framed in passe part out, and so forth. There were also 20 old maids wearing wooden beads in it, with trays of muffins slung round their necks, and they offered the trays to the boys. They sang through their noses in educated accents and danced a Morris dance to their own time. This is what they sang. Savoury toast and a green iced cone, Shamook beams and a dainty scone, Devonshire tea and ginger pop, all together in ye old tea shop. On the third floor there was a hush. The carpet, which was 6 inches thick, was of imperial purple, and all the pillars and chairs were gilts. 20 solemn men in livery stood in a row in front of a buffet, which was loaded down with buckets of iced champagne, thin sandwiches of brown bread and butter, oysters, truffles, olives, croûtes, slices of lemon, soufflés, and so on. The solemn men advanced in perfect rank toward the boys, halted, bowed to the ground, and burst into song. Duchess after you, with premier crew, Duke have a cigar, pass one to the Tsar. Pâté de foie, caviar, caviar. No, thank you, said Kay, as they went to the fourth floor while the solemn men were singing caviar, caviar behind them, like soldiers in Faust. The fourth floor was the last from the top, and in it were the worst temptations. It was shining with white and silver, and the floor was of ivory. At the other end of the room was a huge chromium bar covered with twinkling crystal taps, out of which there poured incessant streams of whipped cream, fruit juice, boiling chocolate, and ice. Every possible kind of ice cream sundae was conveyed along the top of this bar, together with plates of cream buns, eclairs, and pastry bilges. Behind the bar, 20 charming Negro minstrels were singing most soulfully. Way down inside the large intestine, far, far away, that's where the ice cream cones are resting, that's where the eclairs stay. The 20 Sunday men went on mixing their sundaes as they sang, and such a delicious aroma of fresh strawberries and cream filled the room that the wart nearly swooned away. However, he pulled himself together, held his nose, shut his eyes, and holding tight to his steel blade, dragged Kay out of the chamber. All the Negro minstrels rolled their eyes at them as they went. Little bit racist, sorry. In the top room of the enchanted castle, they found Queen Morgan Le Fay. Since more than half of the things which they had already come across had not yet been invented, they were not particularly surprised by her appearance. She was a very beautiful lady wearing beach pajamas and smoked glasses. One side of her yellow hair fell over the right optic of her glasses, and she was smoking a cigarette in a long green jade holder as she lay full length on a white leather sofa. All round the walls on the grand piano there were photographs signed, Darling Morgie from Oberon, best wishes Pendragon, R.I. From Charlie to his own Queenie, yours sincerely, Bath and Wells, or love from all at Windsor Castle. Excuse us, said Kay. We have come to take away Friar Tuck. Queen Morgan took off her dark spectacles, and they were horrified to see that she kept her eyes closed. She looked at them from between the lids. We are sorry, said the wart. If the iron is hurting you, we will go away as soon as you set the others free. But the Queen only put her cigarette back in her mouth and blew a slow puff. Her blind face looked terrible. She won't answer, said Kay. We must do something. Do you think we ought to go up to her and kiss her or something frightful like that? We could try touching her with the iron. You do it. No, you. Well, then, both together. The boys held hands and advanced upon the enchantress, holding the daggers in clammy palms. But just as they reached the sofa, a spasm of agony passed over the Queen's face. She opened her eyes. She vanished from under their very noses, leaving nothing but a whiff of smoke. Well, said the wart, now what shall we do? We must search the castle. Not only had the Queen of Air and Darkness vanished, but everybody else in the castle had vanished also. In the Sunday room the cream and chocolate still gushed from the taps, but there were no minstrels. In the room below the buffet still groaned under iced champagne. But the bowing waiters were gone. No wooden beads clashed in the old tea shop, and the 20 trays of the chocolate maidens stood abandoned on the maroon carpet. Even the man with buttons had disappeared from the bright hall. The loneliness made things more fearful than before, and the sight of Queen Morgan's cigarette burning itself out in an ashtray beside the sofa was too horrible for words. "Let's go," said Kay. "I can't stand this." "They must be somewhere," said the wart. They were standing in the empty room with its imitation oak beams, and they had been searching for half an hour. "Do you suppose they could have been turned into something? Perhaps they are walled up in the walls or locked in the cellars." "I don't think there are any cellars." "If I had to hide people in this castle," said the wart, "and if I had the power of turning people into things, I should turn them into stones and hide them in the walls. But you couldn't do that, because the walls have got all the stones already. If you put extra ones in, the whole place would fall over." "Well, anyway, I should hide them among what there were a lot of." "Would you?" said Kay. "Then what do you think of this?" He walked up to the imitation mantelpiece, which was right in front of them, and pointed with his finger. There, amongst the innumerable brass moons and harnesses of horses, fancy flower pots containing anemones, sheep bells, menus, Indian gods made in Birmingham, lucky elephants, dogs made out of pipe cleaners, and sets of wooden monkeys called "I see no evil, I hear no evil, and I speak no evil." They had their wooden hands respectively over their eyes, ears, and mouths, and very ridiculous they looked. Among all these rarities the wart saw what they were searching for. It was a pathetic sight. 4 pairs of eyes were staring mournfully at the boys. 4 beseeching faces were turned in their direction. Poor Cavil, done up as a china dog with spots on it and a bow, was looking imploringly at his master. The dog boy in terracotta, under the guise of a Neapolitan lad, was holding out a fishing rod with obvious distaste. Old Wat, carved out of wood, was disguised as a Swiss woodcutter, and had a clock for his stomach, which told the wrong time. And the miserable Friar Tuck, as a pink satin cupid which could be used as a pin-cushion, was nervously holding a piece of blue ribbon round his tummy. "Touch them with the iron!" cried the wart, laughing more than was quite respectful. "Gor blimey!" said Friar Tuck, stepping off the mantelpiece, mopping his brow, and making quite sure that he was in his mawkish habit over again. "Gor blimey and coo, dash my wig if I didn't think you were going to miss us." Well, master," said the dog boy, "that was a dreadful moment." Cavil contented himself with barking wildly, biting their toes, lying on his back, trying to wag his tail in that position, and generally behaving like an idiot. Poor old Wat touched his forelock. "Now then, all," said Kay, "this is my adventure, and we must go home quick." The waiting bands were expecting them with bated breath, and the castle of the Queen of the Good People grew dim behind them. The neon lights faded away. "Well done, you two," said Marian. "And now," said Robin, "for a bit of fun with those griffins." And as quickly as that, they escaped from the castle, which makes this the end of Chapter 11. We'll see you in Chapter 12.